Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Some betrayals cut so deep they reshape your entire understanding of reality. And standing in aisle 7 of that suburban supermarket on a Tuesday afternoon, holding a cart full of mundane groceries while my world crumbled around me, I realized I'd been living inside someone else's carefully constructed lie for the past 3 years. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead like angry wasps, and the smell of fresh bread from the bakery section seemed to mock the bitter taste that had suddenly filled my mouth. My ex-wife's son and I ran into each other at the supermarket 10 years after the divorce. "Long time no see," I said. The words had come out automatically, the kind of polite greeting you offer when you're not sure if the other person even remembers you. Tyler Sullivan had grown from the awkward 14-year-old I'd known into a man of 24, but those same intelligent eyes that used to look at me with something approaching respect now held a mixture of shock and what I could only describe as horror. He looked at my current wife beside me and froze. Claire had been examining a package of organic pasta, her perfectly manicured fingers turning it over to read the ingredients with the same meticulous attention she brought to everything in our life together. She'd always been particular about details, something I'd initially found charming about her. The way she organized our spice rack alphabetically, how she folded my shirts with military precision, the methodical way she planned our social calendar months in advance. Now, watching Tyler's face drain of color as he stared at her, those same traits took on a more sinister cast. Without a word, he fled as if he'd seen the Grim Reaper. The kid practically knocked over an elderly woman in his haste to escape, his sneakers squeaking against the polished floor as he rounded the corner toward the exit. Claire looked up from her pasta examination, eyebrows raised in that perfectly sculpted arch that had first caught my attention at the coffee shop where we'd met. "Who was that?" she asked, her voice carrying that slight breathiness that had once made my heart race. "He seemed to know you." Before I could answer, moments later, my phone buzzed with a message from him. I pulled it out, expecting maybe an apology for the awkward encounter, but what I found instead made my blood turn to ice in my veins. "Divorce her now. Your new wife is." The message cut off there, followed immediately by another text. "Can't explain here. Meet me at Riverside Park, North Bench by the Old Oak. Come alone. Your life depends on it." Claire was still watching me, and I realized I'd been staring at my phone for what must have been 30 seconds. "Everything all right, honey?" she asked, moving closer to me, her hand touching my arm in that possessive way she had. "You look like you've seen a ghost." If only she knew how accurate that description was. I met Tyler 2 hours later, after making excuses about needing to stop by the office to pick up some files. The park was nearly empty except for a jogger on the distant trail and an old man feeding ducks by the pond. Tyler was sitting on the bench exactly where he'd said he'd be, but he looked like he'd aged 5 years in the span of our brief supermarket encounter. His hand was shaking as he lit his third cigarette since I'd arrived. "You have to understand," he began without preamble, "I never thought I'd see her again. When Mom told me you'd remarried, I figured it was just some random woman. I never imagined." He took a long drag, exhaling smoke that dispersed quickly in the afternoon breeze. "Danny, the woman you married isn't who you think she is. I'd always liked Tyler. Even during the messy divorce from his mother Beth, he'd somehow managed to maintain a relationship with both of us, though it had naturally faded over the years as he went off to college and started his own life. He was a good kid, honest to a fault, which was why his next words hit me like a physical blow. Her real name isn't Claire Hoffman. It's Claire Dutton, and she was Mom's best friend 8 years ago. She's the one who orchestrated everything, the affair, the divorce, all of it. She seduced Mom's lover specifically to get information about your marriage, your weaknesses, your financial situation. The whole thing was planned from the beginning. The world seemed to tilt sideways, and I gripped the edge of the bench to steady myself. That's impossible. I met Claire 3 years ago at Murphy's Coffee House. She was reading a book about architecture, and I struck up a conversation because I just finished designing the new library downtown. It was completely random. Tyler's laugh was bitter and humorless. Nothing about Claire Dutton is random, Danny. She knew you'd be there that day because she'd been studying your routine for months. The book, Architecture for Dummies, probably picked up an hour before you arrived. She played you from the very first moment, just like she played my mom. The pieces began falling into place with sickening clarity. Claire's mysterious past that she'd always been vague about. The way she'd seemed to know exactly what to say to win me over during our courtship. Her uncanny ability to anticipate my needs and desires. Even our meeting location. I've been stopping at Murphy's every Tuesday morning for 2 years before I met her. Of course, she would have known. Why? I managed to ask, though my throat felt like it was lined with sandpaper. What does she want? Money, initially, but I think it's become something more twisted than that. She gets off on the control, the manipulation. She destroyed my mother's life just to prove she could, and now she's done the same thing to you. Tyler crushed his cigarette under his heel with more force than necessary. There's something else, Danny. Something I didn't want to tell you, but you need to know. She's not done with you yet. This was never meant to be permanent. What do you mean? 3 weeks ago, I was at a bar downtown with some friends from college. I saw her there with a man I didn't recognize. Definitely not you. They were close. Very close. When she went to the bathroom, I followed her, and I heard her on the phone. She was talking about timelines, about how much longer she needed to maintain the charade. She said something about a final payday, and then she could disappear forever. I stared at the ducks on the pond, watching them glide across the surface with deceptive calm, while their feet paddled frantically beneath the water. It seemed like an apt metaphor for my life. How long have you known? I recognized her the moment I saw her at your wedding. I tried to convince myself I was wrong, that it was just someone who looked similar. But there was no mistaking those eyes, that smile. I should have said something then, but I didn't know how to prove it, and honestly, you looked so happy. I thought maybe... He shrugged helplessly. I thought maybe she'd actually changed, that she genuinely cared about you. I was wrong. The rage was building slowly in my chest, a familiar burn that I'd learned to recognize over the years. It was the same feeling I'd had when I discovered Beth's affair, when I'd realized that my business partner had been embezzling from our firm, when my father had died and left everything to his secretary instead of his son. The difference was that those betrayals had caught me off guard, left me reeling and reactive. This time will be different. I need proof, I said quietly. Everything you can give me about Claire Dutton, about what she did to your mother, about the man she was with at the bar. I need phone numbers, addresses, photographs, anything that can verify what you're telling me. Tyler nodded eagerly. I kept everything from Mom's divorce. She made me promise to hold on to all the evidence in case Claire ever surfaced again. I have recordings, text messages, even some surveillance footage that Mom's private investigator collected. It's all in a safety deposit box downtown. Good. We'll start there. I stood up, my mind already racing through possibilities. But Tyler, I need you to understand something. Once we go down this road, there's no coming back. What I'm planning to do to Claire and whoever she's working with won't be pretty, and it won't be legal. If you're not prepared for that, you need to walk away now. He met my gaze steadily, and for a moment I saw flashes of the man he was becoming rather than the boy he'd been. She destroyed my family, Danny. She turned my mother into a broken woman who spent 3 years in therapy just to function again. Whatever you're planning, I want in. That night, I sat in my study with a glass of bourbon and Claire's laptop, which I'd carefully extracted from her purse while she was in the shower. My hands were steady as I connected the USB drive that contained Tyler's evidence to the computer, uploading everything to a secure cloud server I maintained for sensitive architectural projects. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was using tools from my professional life to investigate my personal betrayal. Claire had been surprisingly careless with her digital security, probably assuming that her loving husband would never think to spy on her. Her email accounts were saved with passwords, her browsing history intact, her photo gallery unencrypted. What I found there made my earlier conversation with Tyler seem like a gentle warning rather than the full scope of her deception. There were dozens of photos of me taken without my knowledge, at work, at the gym, having lunch with clients. Surveillance photos that dated back almost 4 years, proving that Tyler was right about the length of her planning. There were detailed notes about my routines, my preferences, my financial situation, even my sexual habits from my marriage to Beth. Someone had done their homework. But the real revelation came in her email correspondence with someone identified only as M. The messages were coded, but not particularly cleverly, and reading through months of their exchanges painted a picture that made my blood run cold. Claire wasn't working alone. This was part of a larger operation that had targeted multiple divorced men with substantial assets. I was just the latest mark in what appeared to be a sophisticated long-term con. The most recent emails were particularly illuminating. Subject: almost ready for final phase. Estimated extraction date: 3 weeks from initiation. New target identified and preliminarily vetted. Suggest standard insertion protocol. Confirmed. Liquidation parameters remain unchanged. Dispose of all physical evidence per usual protocol. Expect bonus compensation upon completion. I read those exchanges 3 times before the full implication sank in. Claire wasn't just planning to leave me. She was planning to kill me. The next morning, I woke up before dawn and went for a run through our neighborhood, taking a deliberately circuitous route that allowed me to spot the surveillance team Claire's partner had stationed near our house. They were good, a different car each day, alternating between a cable repair van and what looked like a landscaping truck, but not good enough to fool someone who'd spent the last 15 years designing security systems for high-end commercial buildings. Claire was still asleep when I returned, her face peaceful in the early morning light filtering through our bedroom curtains. Looking at her now, knowing what I knew, was like seeing a completely different person. The soft curve of her smile seemed predatory. The way her hand reached for me, even in sleep, felt calculating rather than affectionate. How'd I been so blind? I made coffee and pretended to read the newspaper while she went through her morning routine, the same ritual she performed every day for 3 years. Shower for exactly 12 minutes, hair dried and styled in precise sections, makeup applied with the methodical precision of someone preparing for a performance. Because that's what her entire life with me had been, a performance. "You seemed distracted last night," she said as she joined me in the kitchen, already dressed in one of her perfectly tailored business suits. Claire worked as a marketing consultant for high-end real estate developments, a job that required extensive travel and provided excellent cover for whatever other activities she was involved in. Just thinking about the Morrison project, I lied smoothly. "The client is being difficult about the timeline." She nodded sympathetically, but I caught the way her eyes flickered to my laptop, which I deliberately left open on the counter. I'd spent an hour that morning creating fake email exchanges about fictional architectural problems, knowing she'd check my computer the moment I left for work. "I might be late tonight," she continued, pouring herself coffee from the pot I'd prepared. "Meeting with a potential client in the city. Could run past midnight." "No problem. I've got plans with Randy anyway." Randy Martinez was my business partner and one of the few people I trusted implicitly. He'd been instrumental in helping me rebuild after the disaster with Beth, and I knew I could count on his discretion for what I was planning. Claire kissed me goodbye with the same passion she'd shown every morning for 3 years, and I forced myself to respond naturally, even though her touch now made my skin crawl. After her car disappeared around the corner, I waited exactly 10 minutes before making my first call. "Randy, it's Danny. Clear your schedule for the next 2 weeks. I need your help with something big." An hour later, I was sitting in Randy's office above our architectural firm, watching him review the evidence Tyler had provided. Randy had always been the more cautious of our partnership, the one who insisted on background checks for all our employees and clients. He'd expressed concerns about Claire from the beginning, though he'd never voiced them directly until now. "Jesus Christ, Danny," he muttered, scrolling through Claire's email exchanges. "How long has this been going on?" "Best guess? They've been planning this for almost 4 years. The woman I married doesn't exist. Claire Dutton disappeared from public records right around the time Claire Hoffman appeared in mine." Randy leaned back in his chair, running his hands through his graying hair. "Okay, so what's the play? We go to the police, turn over the evidence, let them handle it." I've been expecting this suggestion, and I'd already decided against it. "These people are professionals, Randy. By the time the police finish their investigation and build a case, I'll be dead and Claire will be halfway around the world with my life insurance payout. Besides, I'm not interested in justice. I want revenge. Danny. Randy's voice carried a warning tone that I'd heard many times over the years. He knew me well enough to recognize when I'd made a decision that couldn't be changed. She destroyed my first marriage, Randy. She's stolen 3 years of my life, and now she's planning to kill me. The legal system isn't equipped to handle someone like Claire Dutton. I stood up and walked to the window overlooking downtown Portland. But I am. The next week passed in a carefully choreographed dance of deception. During the day, I maintained my normal routine while using every spare moment to investigate Claire's network. Tyler had been invaluable in this process. His mother's private investigator had been thorough, and the evidence he'd collected provided dozens of leads to follow. Claire's partner, M, turned out to be Marcus Wright, a career criminal with a history of elaborate con jobs targeting wealthy divorcees. His real name was Michael Duvall, and he'd served time in 3 different states for fraud, identity theft, and assault. What the public records didn't show was his connection to at least 6 suspicious deaths over the past decade, all wealthy men who died in apparent accidents shortly after marrying women who then disappeared with substantial payouts. But Marcus wasn't working alone either. The operation involved at least 4 other people: a private investigator who specialized in background research on potential targets, a forger who created the false identities the women used, a financial expert who handled the money laundering, and what appeared to be a freelance killer who ensured that problematic targets didn't survive long enough to expose the scheme. I spent hours studying surveillance footage from the bar where Tyler had seen Claire with her mystery man, eventually identifying him as David Kim, a former Special Forces operator who'd been dishonorably discharged for excessive violence during overseas deployments. His service record, which Randy helped me access through contacts in the Veterans Administration, painted a picture of a man perfectly suited for the role of professional killer. The more I learned about the scope of their operation, the more impressed I became with their planning. They'd chosen their targets carefully: divorced men with substantial assets but limited family connections, people who wouldn't be immediately missed if they died suddenly. They'd established multiple fallback identities, offshore accounts, and escape routes. They'd even arranged for Claire to have an ironclad alibi for the night they planned to kill me. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd underestimated me. On Thursday night, Claire announced that her business trip had been extended another day. She'd be staying overnight in Seattle, meeting with clients through Friday afternoon. I expressed appropriate disappointment, while mentally noting that this fit perfectly with the timeline I'd observed in her emails. According to their plan, I would die Friday night in what would appear to be a home invasion gone wrong. That gave me exactly 24 hours to complete my preparations. I started by visiting a storage unit I'd rented under a false name in a neighboring city. Over the past week, I'd been gradually moving items there, camping equipment, tools, supplies that would be needed for what came next. I'd also made several cash purchases from different hardware stores, ensuring that no single transaction would appear suspicious if anyone bothered to investigate later. Friday morning, I called in sick to work and spent the day conducting final surveillance of each member of Claire's team. Marcus was staying at a hotel downtown under his right identity. David Kim had rented a house in the suburbs that was clearly being used as a base of operations. The private investigator, Helen Torres, worked out of a legitimate-seeming office but lived alone in an apartment that would be easy to access. By evening, I was ready. I'd always prided myself on being a careful planner. In architecture, attention to detail could mean the difference between a building that stood for decades and one that collapsed in the first strong wind. The same principles applied to what I was about to do. Success would depend on precise timing, thorough preparation, and the ability to adapt when circumstances inevitably changed. Claire called at 8 o'clock, right on schedule. "Hi, honey. Just wanted to check in. The meetings are running later than expected, so I probably won't be home until tomorrow afternoon." "No worries," I replied, injecting just the right amount of disappointment in my voice. "I'll probably just order pizza and catch up on some reading." "Sound perfect. I love you." "Love you too." The lie came easily now. At 9:30, I received a text from Tyler. package delivered. Ready when you are. I smiled for the first time in a week. Tyler had proven remarkably resourceful over the past few days, using his connections from college to acquire items that couldn't be purchased through normal channels. His hatred for Claire Dutton ran almost as deep as mine, and he'd embraced his role in her destruction with enthusiasm that would have worried me under different circumstances. At 10 o'clock exactly, I made my move. The beauty of a well-executed plan is that it unfolds with the inevitability of a controlled demolition. Each element serves a specific purpose, and when properly coordinated, the result is both devastating and precise. I'd spent years watching buildings come down, studying the way strategic placement of explosives could bring down massive structures with surgical accuracy. The same principles applied to destroying lives. David Kim was my first target, primarily because he represented the most immediate physical threat. I've been watching his rented house for 3 days, learning his patterns, identifying his vulnerabilities. Former special forces or not, he'd grown complacent during his years as a civilian contractor. He kept regular hours, didn't vary his routes, and had developed a fondness for expensive whiskey that I intended to exploit. I entered his house through the basement window at 10:47 p.m., exactly 13 minutes after he'd settled into his nightly routine of drinking alone while watching cable news. The sedative Tyler had acquired worked exactly as promised. Tasteless, odorless, and potent enough to incapacitate a man Kim's size within minutes of ingestion. He never saw me coming. When he woke up 6 hours later, he was zip-tied to a chair in the basement of an abandoned warehouse outside the city. I'd chosen the location carefully, remote enough to ensure privacy, but close enough to several other sites I'd need to visit before dawn. "Who the fuck are you?" His words were slurred from the lingering effects of the drugs, but his eyes were alert and calculating. Even restrained, he radiated the kind of controlled violence that came from years of professional killing. "I'm Daniel Morrison," I said simply, "though I suppose you know me as your next victim." Recognition dawned in his eyes, followed quickly by something that might have been respect. "You figured out. Eventually. The question now is whether you're going to tell me everything I want to know about your operation, or whether we're going to do this the hard way." He laughed, a sound devoid of any real humor. "You think you're the first Mark who's gotten wise to us? 3 years ago, a guy in Denver figured out what was happening. Know what happened to him? I assume you killed him. Slowly. Very slowly. And when we're done with you, we're going to do the same thing to that kid who's been helping you. Tyler, right? Claire's been watching him since your little park meeting." The rage that had been simmering in my chest for a week finally boiled over. I prepared for this moment, known that it would come, but hearing him threaten Tyler still caught me off guard. The kid had risked everything to warn me, and now he was in danger because of it. I picked up the first tool from the array I'd laid out on a nearby workbench, a pair of industrial wire cutters that I'd originally purchased for a construction project. "Let's start with your fingers and work our way up. For every piece of information you give me, you keep a digit. Refuse to answer, and you lose one. Simple math." What followed was 47 minutes of the most brutal interrogation I'd ever witnessed, let alone conducted. I'd always known I was capable of violence when pushed far enough, but I'd never understood the depth of my own capacity for cruelty until that night. Kim was a professional killer, trained to withstand torture, but he was also a man with a healthy appreciation for self-preservation. By the time the sun started to rise, I had everything I needed: the location of their primary base of operations, the identities of all 6 team members, the timeline for their planned escape after my death, and most importantly, the location where they were holding their contingency funds, over $3 million in cash and negotiable securities stolen from previous victims. Kim himself was no longer a concern. I'd been careful to ensure that his death would send the right message to his surviving partners while providing no useful evidence to any potential investigators. The warehouse had security cameras, but they'd been recording to a digital system that would mysteriously malfunction during a power surge scheduled to occur 30 minutes after I left. Marcus Wright was my second target, and he proved considerably easier to handle than Kim. I found him in his hotel room at dawn, already packing for what was clearly an emergency departure. Someone had warned him that something was wrong, but not quickly enough for him to escape. Unlike Kim, Marcus broke almost immediately. He was a con artist, not a killer, and the sight of David Kim's severed finger, which I'd brought as a visual aid, convinced him that cooperation was his only chance of survival. It was supposed to be simple, he babbled as I secured his hands with the same zip ties I'd used on Kim. Find wealthy divorce guys, send in one of our girls, wait for the right moment, then liquidate the target and move on. Clean, efficient, profitable. How many? I asked. What? How many men have you killed? Personally? None. That was always Kim's job. But the operation? Maybe 30, 40 guys over the past 8 years. We were good at it, Danny. Really good. 40 men. 40 husbands, fathers, sons who'd been murdered for nothing more than their bank account balances. I thought about their families, the wives and children who'd been left to grieve losses they'd never understand, and my resolve hardened even further. Where's Claire? Safe house in the mountains. About 2 hours north of here. She's supposed to stay put until Kim confirms that you're dead. Then we all meet up and head for Mexico. And Helen Torres? Marcus's face went pale. How do you know about Helen? I know about all of you, Marcus. The question is whether you're going to help me find her or whether you're going to follow Kim's example. It took another hour to extract the remaining information I needed, but by 8 o'clock that morning, I had complete details about their operation, including bank account numbers, safe house locations, and the identities of their next 3 potential targets. Marcus had kept meticulous records, partly out of professional habit and partly as insurance against his partners. Helen Torres was at her apartment, apparently unaware that anything had gone wrong. I found her watering plants on her balcony, a picture of domestic normalcy that belied her role in multiple murders. She was a small woman in her 50s, the kind of person who would blend seamlessly into any crowd, which made her perfect for surveillance work. She tried to run when she saw me, but there was nowhere to go. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor, and I'd already blocked the only exit. "You're Daniel Morrison," she said, backing toward the sliding door to her balcony. "You're supposed to be dead. Disappointing, I'm sure. Where are the files on your other targets?" "I don't know what you're talking about." I sighed and pulled out my phone, showing her a photo I'd taken earlier. Marcus right hung from construction crane at the warehouse, his body positioned to be visible from the interstate that ran past the industrial district. "Your partner, Marcus, was more cooperative. I'd prefer not to have to get creative with you as well." She broke faster than either of her colleagues, leading me to a hidden safe that contained detailed dossiers on dozens of potential victims. The scope of their operation was even larger than I'd imagined. They'd been researching targets across the entire Pacific Northwest, building profiles that went back months or even years. I spent an hour photographing everything, ensuring that I had complete documentation of their crimes. Then I made Helen call Claire's phone and deliver a coded message that would bring my wife home early. By noon, I was in position at our house, waiting for Claire to arrive. I'd arranged the scene carefully, her laptop open on the kitchen counter, displaying the evidence I'd collected about her real identity. Marcus's phone, which would show their text message exchanges. Photos of her surveillance targets spread across our dining room table. I wanted her to understand exactly how thoroughly her world had collapsed before we had our final conversation. She walked through the front door at 1:23 p.m., calling out my name with that same affectionate tone she'd used for 3 years. I heard her heels clicking on the hardwood floor of our entryway, heard her set down her purse and keys in their usual spot, heard her humming the melody of a song that had been playing on the radio during our first date. The humming stopped when she reached the kitchen. "Hello, Claire," I said from my position in the doorway. "Or should I call you Claire Dutton?" She froze, her eyes taking in the evidence spread across our home. For just a moment, the mask slipped, and I saw the real person underneath, cold, calculating, utterly without remorse. Then her training kicked in, and she gave me the same loving smile that had charmed me for 3 years. "Danny, I can explain everything. Whatever you think you know, there's more to the story. I'm sure there is. Start with why you killed my first marriage." Her smile never wavered. "Because I was paid to. Because you were researched for something bigger. Because I'm very good at my job. The casual way she admitted to destroying my life was almost more shocking than the admission itself. There was no guilt, no regret, just professional pride in a job well done. And now you're planning to kill me. Was planning. Past tense. Obviously, that's no longer an option. She moved closer, and I realized she was positioning herself within reach of the knife block on our kitchen counter. The question now is what happens next? What happens next is that you disappear forever. Just like David Kim disappeared. Just like Marcus Wright disappeared. Just like Helen Torres is about to disappear. For the first time, genuine fear flickered across her features. You killed them. I killed them. All three of them. And now I'm going to kill you. She lunged for the knives, faster than I'd expected, but not fast enough. I'd been anticipating this moment for days, and the taser Tyler had acquired stopped her cold. She collapsed to our kitchen floor, convulsing as 50,000 volts coursed through her nervous system. When the spasms stopped, I secured her to one of our dining room chairs with the same zip ties I'd used on her partners. She was conscious but disoriented, her perfect hair disheveled for the first time since I'd known her. The difference between you and me, I said as I began assembling the equipment I'd need for what came next, is that I never claimed to be a good person. You've spent 3 years pretending to love me, pretending to build a life with me, pretending to be someone you're not. I've always known exactly what I am. And what's that? Her voice was steadier than I'd expected. I'm a man who doesn't forgive. I'm a man who doesn't forget. And I'm a man who always finishes what he starts. What happened over the next 6 hours broke every law I'd ever sworn to uphold and violated every moral principle I'd been raised to respect. But by the time the sun set on that Friday evening, Claire Dutton had told me everything about her childhood in foster care, about her recruitment into Marcus's operation, about the dozens of men they'd killed, about the millions of dollars they'd stolen, about the new identities they'd created for their escape. More importantly, she'd told me about the offshore accounts where their stolen money was hidden, and she provided the access codes that would allow me to transfer every penny to accounts I'd established for the families of their victims. Claire died just after midnight. Her last words a promise that others would come looking for me, that her death would only bring more violence into my life. I was counting on it. I spent Sunday disposing of the evidence and creating an ironclad alibi for the weekend. Claire had supposedly been killed during a home invasion that occurred while I was attending a conference in San Francisco, an event I'd actually attended, making sure to be seen by dozens of witnesses who could confirm my presence there. Her body was found Monday morning by our housekeeper, who immediately called the police. I returned from my conference to find my house surrounded by squad cars and crime scene tape, playing the role of the devastated husband with the skill of a professional actor. The investigation that followed was thorough, but ultimately fruitless. Claire's killer had worn gloves, left no fingerprints, taken nothing of obvious value. The murder appeared to be random, motiveless, the kind of tragedy that could happen to anyone. The police interviewed me extensively, but found no reason to suspect that the grieving widower might have been responsible for his wife's death. 3 weeks later, Tyler and I met again at Riverside Park, sitting on the same bench where he'd first warned me about Claire. He looked different now. Older, more serious, as if our shared experience had aged him beyond his years. The money transfers went through, he told me. 43 families received compensation for their losses. Anonymous donations, completely untraceable. Good. I watched the same ducks gliding across the pond, marveling at how peaceful they looked despite everything that had happened since our last conversation. And the files, delivered to the FBI field office in Seattle, along with enough evidence to connect Claire's operation to unsolved murders in 6 different states. They'll never be able to prosecute anyone, but at least the families will finally have answers. We sat in comfortable silence for several minutes. 2 men who'd shared something that couldn't be discussed with anyone else. Tyler had proven invaluable during the cleanup phase, using his computer skills to ensure that all traces of our investigation had been eliminated. More importantly, he'd shown a capacity for ruthless pragmatism that would serve him well in whatever came next. "Do you regret it?" he asked finally. I considered the question carefully. For people were dead because of decisions I'd made and actions I'd taken. I crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed, done things that would have horrified the man I'd been just 2 weeks earlier. But when I thought about the families who would finally have closure, about the future victims who would be spared Claire's attention, about the justice that would never have come through legal channels, I found that my conscience was surprisingly clear. No, I said, I don't regret any of it. 6 months later, I sold my architectural firm and left Portland permanently. The insurance payout from Claire's death had been substantial, and combined with the money I'd recovered from offshore accounts, I had more than enough to start over anywhere I chose. I settled in a small town in Montana, bought a cabin near a lake, and began building a new life under a carefully constructed identity that would stand up to any reasonable scrutiny. I was done with marriage, done with trusting people who might not be what they seemed, done with being anyone's victim. But I wasn't done with being someone that predators should fear. The skills I developed during my investigation of Claire's operation had proven surprisingly transferable. Within a year, I'd established a reputation in certain circles as someone who could solve problems that were beyond the reach of conventional law enforcement. Someone who could make dangerous people disappear permanently, quietly, and without leaving traces that would embarrass his clients. Tyler had been right about one thing. Others had come looking for me. Claire's operation hadn't existed in isolation. It was part of a larger network of criminals who preyed on vulnerable people for profit. When word spread that their carefully planned scheme had been exposed and their entire team eliminated, some of those criminals decided that I represented a threat that needed to be addressed. They were right, of course. I was a threat to anyone who made their living by destroying other people's lives. And over the past 5 years, I made sure that threat was taken very seriously indeed. I never remarried. I never trusted anyone completely again. But I also never forgot the lesson that Claire Dutton had taught me. Sometimes the only way to deal with monsters is to become something even more dangerous than they are. And I had become very dangerous indeed. The lake outside my cabin was perfectly still this morning, reflecting the mountains like a mirror. I sat on my deck with a cup of coffee and yesterday's newspaper, reading about the mysterious disappearance of a con artist who'd been targeting elderly widows in Denver. The police had no leads, no suspects, no idea what had happened to him. I smiled and turned to the sports page. It was going to be a beautiful day. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Foundation of Glass. Ryan Holloway's life had been built on sacrifice. At 45, he had transformed from a working-class kid from rural Pennsylvania into the owner of Holloway Construction, a company that specialized in luxury commercial properties across 3 states. His calloused hands had laid the foundation of his empire, and even now, as CEO, he insisted on visiting sites regularly, speaking with his crews, and occasionally picking up tools when the moment called for it. His marriage to Melanie had lasted 23 years. They'd met in college. She was studying interior design while he worked construction jobs to pay tuition for his business degree. They'd been broke, but happy then. 2 children followed. Amber, now 22 and in her final year of the expensive private university that Ryan paid for entirely, and Noah, 19, who had just started his sophomore year at another prestigious college. The Holloways lived in a sprawling home that Ryan had designed and partially built himself in Lancaster's most affluent neighborhood. He'd provided a life of comfort for his mother-in-law, Sophia, after his father-in-law passed away 5 years ago. His wife drove a luxury SUV. His children never wanted for anything. But lately, Ryan had noticed the widening distance. His long hours building the business had created a gap that someone else seemed to be filling. The family dinners had grown quieter, with conversations that halted when he entered rooms. Text messages that Melanie shielded from his view. Calls that ended abruptly when he approached. "Working late again tonight, honey?" Melanie asked one evening in early October, not looking up from her phone as Ryan packed his briefcase. Big project in Harrisburg. The hospital extension. He studied her face, noting how she seemed almost relieved. Should be home by 9. Don't worry about rushing back. I'm meeting the girls for dinner anyway. Ryan nodded, kissed her cheek, which she received with practiced politeness, and headed out. He didn't tell her he'd already rescheduled the meeting because he wanted to surprise her with a spontaneous dinner date. That night, driving past La Bella Vita, Melanie's favorite Italian restaurant, Ryan spotted her through the window. She wasn't with the girls. She was with a man Ryan recognized as Damon Walsh, a financial advisor who had recently moved to Lancaster and joined their country club. His hand rested on Melanie's, their faces close in intimate conversation. Ryan drove past without stopping, a cold weight settling in his chest. He didn't confront her that night. Instead, he began observing, collecting, noting the patterns that had been invisible to him before. He'd built his business by being methodical, by understanding the terrain before breaking ground. This situation would be no different. Mr. Holloway, his assistant Nora, said the next morning, "Your wife called about the donation to Amber's sorority fundraiser. It's $10,000 this year." Ryan nodded, authorizing the transfer. Another check written, another expense paid, another withdrawal from an emotional account that was already overdrawn. That evening, as he looked through family photos in his home office, studying the gradual changes in expressions over the years, Ryan made a silent promise to himself. He would see the full picture, no matter how painful the revelation might be. Chapter 2. The Invisible Man. Ryan's 50th birthday approached in late October. Despite the growing distance between him and his family, he decided to make one more effort at connection. He reserved a private room at Lancaster's most exclusive restaurant, The Vault, housed in a renovated historic bank building. The symbolism wasn't lost on him. A place that once secured other people's valuables would now host what remained of his most valuable possession, his family. "I've booked The Vault for my birthday next Saturday," Ryan announced at breakfast on Sunday morning, one of the rare occasions when the whole family was present. "Private room. I thought it would be nice for all of us to spend some time together." Melanie glanced up from her phone with a tight smile. "That sounds lovely, Ryan." Noah shrugged. "Do I have to dress up?" "Yes." Ryan and Melanie answered simultaneously, perhaps the only thing they'd agreed on in weeks. Amber tapped at her coffee cup. "I'll check my schedule, Dad." "Please do. It's important to me," Ryan replied, watching as his daughter exchanged a quick glance with her mother. Over the next 2 weeks, Ryan paid attention to the subtle signals. Melanie's increasing time away from home, the hushed phone conversations, the unexplained shopping bags that never seemed to contain items that appeared in their home. At work, Ryan began reorganizing his financial affairs, meeting with his lawyer, Bennett Woodward, a shrewd attorney who had been with him since the early days of his company. "Everything all right, Ryan?" Bennett asked after they had reviewed several documents transferring assets. "Just getting my affairs in order, Ben. You know how it is. A man reaches a certain age, starts thinking about legacy." Bennett nodded, though his eyes revealed he suspected more. 3 days before his birthday, Ryan paid the reservation in full, an extravagant multi-course meal for 6. Himself, Melanie, Amber, Noah, his mother-in-law Sophia, and his younger brother Lucas, the only family member who had supported Ryan throughout his difficult childhood. He sent calendar invites to everyone with all the details. Everyone confirmed. On his birthday morning, Ryan awoke to an empty bed. Melanie had left a card on his pillow with a generic message and a store-bought cake in the refrigerator. No personal gift. No special breakfast. Just a perfunctory acknowledgement of the day. Still, he held on to hope for the evening. He dressed carefully in a tailored navy suit, the one outfit that Melanie had once said made him look devastatingly handsome. He arrived early at the Vault, confirmed the arrangements, and settled in to wait for his family. 6 o'clock came. Then 6:30. At 6:45, Ryan called Melanie. No answer. He texted Amber and Noah. No response. He called his brother Lucas. "Hey, I'm so sorry, Ryan." Lucas answered, genuine regret in his voice. "My flight got canceled. I'm still in Denver. I tried calling you earlier, but it went straight to voicemail." At 7, Ryan sat alone in the private dining room, the staff awkwardly hovering, unsure whether to begin serving or wait longer. "Would you like some wine while you wait, Mr. Holloway?" the server asked. "Yes, thank you," Ryan replied. maintaining his composure. "The Cabernet, please." At 7:30, his phone buzzed with a notification. His heart lifted momentarily, thinking it was a message explaining the delay. Instead, it was a social media alert. Melanie had tagged a new post, "Family night with my favorites." Red heart. The photo showed Melanie, Amber, Noah, Sophia, and, Ryan's jaw tightened, Damon Walsh, all smiling around a table at the Capitol Grill, an upscale steakhouse on the other side of town. Ryan stared at the image, noting the details. Amber wore the diamond earrings he had given her for her 21st birthday. Noah had on the watch Ryan had handed down to him when he graduated high school. Sophia wore the pearl necklace Ryan had bought her after her husband died. And Melanie was wearing a new dress he'd never seen, leaning slightly toward Damon, who had his arm casually draped on the back of her chair. The server returned with the wine. "Should we perhaps start with some appetizers while you wait, sir?" Ryan looked up from his phone, his expression unreadable. "No need. It appears my guests won't be joining me tonight." He took a slow sip of the wine. "I'll have dinner alone." As he ate his solitary meal, Ryan composed a brief social media post of his own. Reminder: "I'm the one who pays mom's bills and kids' college fees." He hit post, then silenced his phone, placing it face down on the table. He ate methodically, savoring each bite of the premium steak, each sip of the $300 bottle of wine. As he finished his meal, Ryan made another decision. This betrayal would not stand unanswered. Chapter 3. The First Move. The morning after his birthday, Ryan rose before dawn. He sat in his home office, surrounded by family photographs that now seemed like artifacts from a stranger's life. One by one, he methodically canceled every automatic payment from his accounts: Sophia's assisted living facility, Amber's sorority dues and apartment rent, Noah's tuition installment plan and meal card, Melanie's personal credit cards, the country club membership, the landscaping service for their home, and dozens of other expenses he had silently maintained for years. Next, he called his company's HR department. "Nancy, I need you to remove Melanie from my health insurance today. Private family matter." His tone left no room for questions. "And please cancel the company platinum cards issued to her and my children immediately." He worked through the morning, systematically dismantling the financial scaffolding that had supported his family's comfortable lifestyle. By noon, he had transferred significant sums to new accounts accessible only to him, and applied a temporary freeze on several family investment accounts pending resolution of discrepancies. When he finished, Ryan drove to his brother Lucas's house, which stood empty while Lucas was still stranded in Denver. He packed a bag with essentials, left his family vehicle in the garage, and took Lucas's spare truck back to his office. At 3 o'clock, precisely when the banks closed for the day, Ryan's phone began to ring. First Melanie, then Sophia, then Amber, then Noah. Text messages flooded in, ranging from confused to demanding to panicked. Melanie: "Ryan, what's going on with the accounts? Call me ASAP." Sophia: "Ryan dear, the facility manager says my payment was declined. There must be some mistake." Amber: "Dad, my rent payment bounced. My landlord is freaking out." Noah: "WTF Dad? The bursar's office just called me. They're threatening to drop my classes." Ryan read each message without responding. At 5 o'clock, he received a call from an unknown number. He answered. "Ryan, it's Damon Walsh. Look, I think we need to talk man-to-man about what's happening." Ryan's voice was perfectly controlled. "I believe you forfeited the right to man-to-man conversations when you chose to spend my birthday with my wife and children. That was an unfortunate coincidence." "No," Ryan interrupted. "A coincidence is running into someone unexpectedly. What happened yesterday was a deliberate choice by all involved. Goodbye, Damon." Ryan ended the call and turned off his phone. He had built his empire by understanding timing and leverage. Now he would use both to dismantle the illusions his family had constructed. That evening, sitting in Lucas's living room, Ryan penned 3 letters by hand. One to Amber, one to Noah, and one to Melanie. He would not write to Sophia. She had raised a daughter who thought betrayal was acceptable, and Ryan had nothing more to say to her. In each letter, he outlined exactly what he knew, when he had discovered it, and what would happen next. The letters were not angry or vindictive. They were precise, detailed, and final. He sealed each in an envelope and placed them in his briefcase. As night fell, Ryan opened his laptop and began the next phase of his plan. By morning, his family would understand the consequences of taking for granted the man who had built everything they enjoyed. Chapter 4. Boundaries Drawn. At precisely 9 the morning after cutting off financial support, Ryan walked into Bennett Woodward's law office, the 3 sealed letters in his briefcase. The receptionist, recognizing one of the firm's most valuable clients, immediately ushered him into Bennett's private office. "You look like hell," Bennett observed, gesturing for Ryan to sit. "I've had better weeks," Ryan agreed, his voice steady despite the dark circles under his eyes. "I need your help with some urgent matters." Over the next hour, Ryan laid out the situation: Melanie's affair with Damon Walsh, his family's absence at his birthday dinner, and the financial steps he had already taken. Bennett took careful notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but offering no judgment. "What exactly do you want to do here, Ryan?" Bennett finally asked. "I want what's fair," Ryan replied. "I built my company from nothing. I've provided an exceptional lifestyle for my family. I want to ensure that whatever happens next, my legacy remains intact, and in the hands of those who actually value it." Bennett nodded. "Let me be direct. Are you looking for reconciliation or separation?" Ryan's expression hardened. "There's nothing to reconcile. I'm not interested in saving a marriage where I'm clearly unwanted. What I want is to establish clear boundaries: financial, legal, and personal." As they discussed strategy, Ryan's phone continued to vibrate with incoming calls and messages. He checked it once to confirm none were from his brother Lucas, then returned it to his pocket unanswered. "They'll try to contact you next," he told Bennett. "When they do, give them this information." He passed Bennett a folder containing terms for what would essentially be a controlled demolition of his marriage. Meanwhile, across town, chaos had erupted at the Holloway residence. Melanie paced the kitchen, her phone pressed to her ear as she made her 15th attempt to reach Ryan. "Still nothing," she told Damon, who sat uncomfortably at the kitchen island. "This is ridiculous. He can't just cut everyone off like this." "He's angry about last night," Damon said. "Maybe if you apologize." "Apologize?" Melanie's voice rose. "For what? Having dinner with my family? He's always working anyway. How were we supposed to know he'd suddenly want to celebrate his birthday?" The doorbell rang, interrupting their conversation. Melanie opened it to find Amber on the doorstep, mascara streaked down her face. "Mom, I got evicted," she cried, pushing past Melanie into the house. "My landlord changed the locks this morning. He said Dad called him personally and told him to terminate my lease immediately." Before Melanie could respond, her phone rang again, Noah this time. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" Noah's voice was panicked. "The university just revoked my housing assignment. They said all future payments have been canceled, and I have to vacate my dorm by tomorrow." As Melanie tried to calm her son, another call came in. The country club, informing her that their membership had been terminated effective immediately, and they needed to remove any personal belongings from their lockers by the end of the day. By noon, Sophia arrived, having taken a taxi from her assisted living community after being informed that her residency was in jeopardy due to non-payment. "What has gotten into Ryan?" Sophia demanded. "I've never seen such childish behavior." The family gathered in the living room, a war council trying to make sense of Ryan's actions. Damon sat awkwardly at the periphery, unsure of his place in this family crisis. "Has anyone actually been able to reach him?" Amber asked, scrolling through her phone. "No," Melanie admitted. "But I called that assistant of his, Nora. She said he hasn't been in the office and she can't reach him either." "This is about last night, isn't it?" Noah said, realization dawning. "Dad's birthday dinner. The one we all bailed on." A heavy silence fell over the room. "It was just dinner," Melanie said defensively. "People miss dinners all the time. He's completely overreacting." "But it was his 50th birthday, Mom," Amber said quietly. "And we all went to dinner with." Her eyes drifted to Damon, then quickly away. Melanie's phone rang again. This time, it was Bennett Woodward's office requesting that she come in for an urgent meeting regarding financial and legal matters pertaining to your marriage. Across town, Ryan sat in a coffee shop, watching real-time notifications as his instructions were carried out. He felt no pleasure in the disruption he'd caused, only a cold determination to dismantle what had already been broken by others' actions. His phone buzzed with a text from Lucas. "Just landed. What's this cryptic message about staying at my place?" "Everything okay?" Ryan typed back. "I'll explain everything tonight." Thank you for being the one person in my life I can count on. As he put down his phone, Ryan noticed a woman watching him from a nearby table. It took him a moment to recognize Lynn Mercer, a project manager from one of his biggest commercial clients. Ryan, she approached cautiously. I don't mean to intrude, but are you all right? You look troubled. For the first time in days, Ryan felt seen, not as a provider or a bank account, but as a human being. Actually, no, he admitted. I'm not all right at all. Would you like some company? She offered. Sometimes it helps to talk to someone completely uninvolved. Ryan hesitated, then gestured to the chair across from him. I'd appreciate that, Lynn. As Ryan gave her the abbreviated version of recent events, he realized he was speaking to someone who understood ambition and sacrifice. Unlike his family, Lynn asked questions about how he felt rather than what he would do next. What happens now? She asked when he finished. Ryan's phone buzzed with a message from Bennett. Melanie just left. Letters delivered as instructed. All parties notified of terms. Now, Ryan said, we see who values the relationship and who only valued the resources. Chapter 5, The Full Accounting. 3 days after cutting off financial support, Ryan finally agreed to a family meeting. He chose neutral territory, a conference room at Bennett's law office, and stipulated that Damon Walsh was not to attend. When Ryan arrived, Bennett was waiting outside the room. They're all in there, Bennett said quietly. And they're not happy. I didn't expect them to be, Ryan replied. Inside, Melanie, Amber, Noah, and Sophia sat around the large conference table, their expressions ranging from anger to anxiety. Ryan took a seat at the head of the table, Bennett beside him. Thank you for coming, Ryan began, his voice businesslike. I've asked Mr. Woodward to facilitate this meeting to ensure everything is properly documented. This is ridiculous, Ryan, Melanie interrupted. You can't just cut us all off without warning. We have bills, responsibilities. Yes, we all have responsibilities, Ryan agreed, his tone measured. Like the responsibility to honor commitments, to show basic respect to family members, to be honest about how we spend our time and with whom. He opened a folder and removed several documents. Before we discuss anything else, I want to establish some facts. Fact 1. I have provided financial support for this family for over 20 years without complaint. Fact 2. I have never missed a payment for anything any of you have needed or wanted. Fact 3. I have never asked for anything in return except basic consideration. Ryan looked directly at each family member. And yet, not one of you could give me even that much on my 50th birthday. Dad, we're sorry about your birthday, Amber said, her voice small. We should have been there. Yes, you should have. Instead, you were at the Capitol Grill with your mothers. Ryan paused, choosing his words carefully. Friend, Mr. Walsh. Melanie flushed. Ryan, Damon is just. Please don't insult my intelligence, Melanie. Ryan cut her off. I know exactly what Damon is. I've known for months. Silence fell over the room as the implication of his words sank in. Why are we here, Ryan? Sophia finally asked. To be punished? To beg. You're here because actions have consequences, Ryan replied simply. And because despite everything, you're still my family. I wanted to explain my decisions to you directly. He distributed copies of a document to each person. This outlines the new financial arrangements moving forward. I am not completely cutting anyone off. I am, however, establishing clear boundaries. The family members quickly scanned the documents, their expressions changing from hope to dismay. This is barely anything, Noah protested, looking up from his paper. My tuition and basic housing, but no spending money? No car allowance. You'll receive what you need, not what you want, Ryan clarified. You can get a part-time job for discretionary expenses, like most college students. And what about me? Sophia demanded. This says you'll only pay for basic assisted living, not the premium suite I'm in now. That's correct, Ryan nodded. The standard accommodations are perfectly adequate. The extra amenities were a luxury I provided, not an obligation. And me? Melanie asked quietly, scanning her document. This is practically nothing, Ryan. It's exactly what you'd receive in a divorce settlement according to our prenuptial agreement, Ryan explained. The house maintenance and utilities will be covered until Amber and Noah finish college. After that, the house will be sold and the proceeds divided according to the prenup. Melanie's face paled. You're divorcing me? I'm giving you a choice, Ryan corrected her. Option 1. Divorce. with the terms outlined in that document. Option 2. Remain married, with separate finances as outlined, while you decide what you really want from life and this marriage. He turned to his children. As for you two, I love you. That hasn't changed. But you're adults now, and it's time you understood that relationships require reciprocity. I've dedicated my life to providing for you. I don't think birthday dinner attendance was too much to ask in return. Amber began to cry. Noah stared at the table. This meeting is not a negotiation, Ryan continued. These are the new terms. You can accept them, or you can choose to make your own way entirely. Either way, the old arrangement is over. And if we refuse? Melanie challenged, her voice tight. Then you'll receive nothing beyond what's legally required, Ryan said simply. And you'll need to vacate the house within 30 days. As the meeting ended, Ryan stood to leave. Amber rushed to him, tears streaming down her face. Dad, please, she begged. I'm so sorry about your birthday. We all are. Can't we fix this? Ryan looked at his daughter, really looked at her, and saw genuine remorse in her eyes. I hope so, Amber, he said softly. But fixing takes more than words. It takes actions that demonstrate true change. As Ryan walked out, Melanie called after him. This isn't over, Ryan. He turned back briefly. You're right about that, Melanie. It's just beginning. Outside, Ryan found Lucas waiting by his car. How'd it go in there? Lucas asked. About as expected, Ryan replied. They're angry, confused, entitled. They still don't really understand what they've done. Lucas nodded thoughtfully. And what about you? Are you okay? For the first time since his birthday, Ryan felt something other than cold determination, a flicker of genuine emotion. No, he admitted. But I will be. As they drove away, Ryan's phone buzzed with a message from Lynn. Thinking of you today. Hope the meeting went as well as it could. A small smile touched Ryan's lips as he typed back. It did. Thank you for caring enough to check. Chapter 6. The Revelation. 2 weeks after the family meeting, the situation had evolved in unexpected ways. Melanie had moved into the guest room and was barely speaking to Ryan, who had returned to the house but spent minimal time there. Noah had gotten a job at the university library and was calling home less frequently. Sophia had grudgingly adjusted to her new living arrangement. And Amber had surprised everyone. The morning after the meeting, Amber had appeared at Ryan's office without an appointment. Dad, can we talk? She'd asked hesitantly. Just us. Over lunch, Amber had been brutally honest. Mom's been seeing Damon for over a year, she confessed. She told me, and Noah, it was nothing serious at first, just a friendship. Then she started including him in family things when you weren't around. Ryan had listened silently as Amber explained how Melanie had gradually normalized Damon's presence, making him seem like part of their extended family circle. The birthday dinner. That was Mom's idea, Amber continued. She said you probably wouldn't notice anyway since you're always working. I knew it was wrong, Dad. I did, but I went along with it. Why are you telling me this now? Ryan had asked. Amber's eyes had welled with tears. Because I don't like who I'm becoming. And because, she hesitated, I found something you should see. She had pulled out her phone and shown Ryan a series of text messages from Melanie to Damon, discussing how they would transition the family after Ryan finally got the message that he wasn't wanted anymore. They've been planning to push you out, Amber explained. Mom said once you left, Damon would help manage all the financial stuff, and everything would be better because he actually wants to be part of the family. That revelation had shifted something fundamental in Ryan. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was strategic and calculating. Now, 2 weeks later, Ryan sat in his office reviewing documents with Bennett and a forensic accountant named Philip Harris. So you see the pattern, Philip explained, pointing to highlighted transactions. Small amounts regularly diverted from joint accounts to this numbered account, which we've confirmed belongs to Ms. Holloway. Over the past 18 months, she's accumulated nearly $300,000. Ryan nodded, unsurprised after Amber's revelation. And we can prove this was done without my knowledge or consent. Absolutely, Philip confirmed. The transfers were always made when you were traveling for business, using a separate device that accessed your accounts through saved passwords. Bennett leaned forward. Ryan, this changes the divorce equation significantly. This is financial fraud, plain and simple. I don't want to press charges, Ryan said firmly. But I do want leverage. What are you thinking? Bennett asked. I'm thinking it's time for the next phase, Ryan replied. I've been reactive so far. Now I need to be proactive. That evening, Ryan invited Lynn to dinner. Over the past 2 weeks, they had developed a friendship built on mutual respect and understanding. Lynn knew about Ryan's situation and had become a valuable sounding board. "You seem different tonight," Lynn observed as they shared a bottle of wine. "More resolved." "I am," Ryan admitted. "I've been so focused on what I've lost that I haven't considered what I might gain from all this." "Like what?" "Freedom, clarity, the chance to rebuild with people who actually value me." Lynn smiled. "That sounds healthy. So what's your next move?" Ryan took a sip of wine. "I'm going to offer Melanie exactly what she wants, a clean break. But on my terms, not hers." Later that night, Ryan returned home to find Melanie waiting in the living room. From her expression, he knew immediately that something had changed. "We need to talk," she said, her tone conciliatory for the first time in weeks. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I want to try to fix our marriage, Ryan." Ryan studied her face, noting the calculation behind her newfound remorse. "That's interesting timing, Melanie. May I ask what prompted this change of heart?" Melanie shifted uncomfortably. "I realized how much our family needs you. How much I need you." "Interesting," Ryan said calmly. "Does your epiphany have anything to do with Damon Walsh's sudden financial problems?" Melanie's eyes widened slightly. "What are you talking about?" "Oh, you haven't heard?" Ryan asked, feigning surprise. "Damon's investment firm is under investigation by the SEC. All his assets have been frozen. It was announced this afternoon." The color drained from Melanie's face. I didn't know." "I'm sure you didn't," Ryan agreed. "Just like I'm sure your sudden interest in reconciliation has nothing to do with discovering your backup plan is no longer viable." "Ryan, that's not fair." "Let me tell you what's not fair, Melanie," Ryan interrupted, his voice still remarkably calm. "Planning to push your husband out of his own family so you can replace him with someone you find more exciting. Stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from joint accounts. Using your children as pawns in your game." Melanie froze. "What are you talking about? I never stole." "Please," Ryan cut her off again. "The forensic accountant has documented every transfer. Every single one, Melanie." For a long moment, they stared at each other across the living room. Then Melanie's expression hardened. "What do you want, Ryan?" "I want what I've always wanted, honesty. So here's my offer. I won't press charges for the financial fraud if you agree to my divorce terms without contest. You'll get exactly what the prenup stipulates. No more, no less. And if I don't agree, then I'll see you in court, where we can discuss those transfers in detail," Ryan replied simply. "Your choice." As Melanie stormed out of the room, Ryan's phone buzzed with a message from Amber, just checking in. "You okay, Dad?" He smiled slightly as he typed back, "Getting better every day. Thank you for telling me the truth." For the first time in months, Ryan felt like he was building something new rather than watching something old crumble away. Chapter 7. New Foundations. 1 month after confronting Melanie about the financial fraud, Ryan's life had undergone a dramatic transformation. He had moved permanently into a penthouse apartment in the city, closer to his company headquarters. Melanie had reluctantly signed the divorce papers after her attorney confirmed that fighting Ryan's terms would likely result in worse outcomes for her. The divorce was now in process, proceeding exactly as Ryan had planned. Noah had surprised everyone by transferring to a state school with a better program in his actual field of interest, engineering rather than business, and had asked Ryan to help him apply for scholarships rather than simply paying his way. "I want to earn it, Dad," he'd explained during one of their weekly dinners. "I don't want to be handed everything anymore." Sophia had adjusted to her new living arrangement and had grudgingly acknowledged that the standard accommodations were adequate, though she remained coolly distant toward Ryan. Amber had perhaps changed the most. After revealing Melanie's schemes to Ryan, she had moved out of her university apartment and into a modest studio that she paid for with her new part-time job at an interior design firm. She was finishing her degree while getting real-world experience, and her relationship with Ryan had evolved into something more adult and equal. The only person not adapting well was Melanie. With the divorce proceeding and Damon Walsh now under investigation and unable to access his assets, she found herself increasingly isolated. Her social circle at the country club had quietly distanced themselves once the details of her behavior began to circulate. Her attempts to reconcile with Ryan, clearly motivated by financial concerns rather than genuine remorse, had been firmly rebuffed. On a crisp November morning, Ryan sat in his office reviewing the latest designs for a major new project when Nora announced an unexpected visitor. "Mr. Walsh is here to see you," she said, her disapproval evident in her tone. "Shall I send him away?" Ryan considered for a moment. "No, I'll speak with him. Give me 5 minutes, then show him in." When Damon entered, he looked markedly different from the confident, polished man who had been photographed with Ryan's family at the Capitol Grill. His expensive suit appeared slightly rumpled, his face drawn with stress. "Thank you for seeing me, Ryan," Damon began, remaining standing when Ryan didn't offer him a seat. "What can I do for you, Damon?" Ryan asked, his tone neutral but not friendly. "I wanted to speak with you man to man," Damon said, unconsciously echoing his words from their brief phone conversation weeks earlier. "About Melanie, about the situation with the SEC." "Let me stop you there," Ryan interrupted. "My divorce from Melanie is proceeding as agreed. Your relationship with her is no longer my concern. As for your SEC troubles, I fail to see how that involves me." Damon's expression tightened. "I think you know exactly how it involves you. The SEC investigation began one day after your meeting with Melanie at your lawyer's office. That's not a coincidence." Ryan leaned back in his chair. "Are you accusing me of something, Damon?" "I'm saying that someone gave the SEC very specific information about certain transactions my firm handled. Information that only someone with insider knowledge would have." "That sounds serious," Ryan commented mildly. "Perhaps you should focus on addressing those allegations rather than pursuing a relationship with my soon-to-be ex-wife." Damon stepped closer to Ryan's desk, his voice dropping. "I know you did this. You couldn't stand that Melanie chose me, so you're trying to destroy me professionally." Ryan stood slowly, his height advantage making Damon step back involuntarily. "First, I didn't do anything except ensure that relevant authorities had accurate information. If you conducted your business ethically, you have nothing to worry about. Second, Melanie didn't choose you. She tried to keep both of us, enjoying my financial support while getting emotional validation from you." He moved around the desk until he was standing directly in front of Damon. "And third, if I wanted to destroy you, Damon, you wouldn't be standing here making accusations. You'd already be finished." The quiet certainty in Ryan's voice made Damon pale slightly. "Is that a threat?" Damon asked, his voice less confident now. "Not at all," Ryan replied. "It's simply a fact. Now, was there anything else you needed?" Damon hesitated, then turned to leave. At the door, he paused. "She really did love you once, you know. Before you became all about the business, all about the money." Ryan's expression didn't change. "That may be true, but respect matters more than love in the long run. And she never respected me, just like she'll never respect you. Good luck with the SEC, Damon. I hear they're very thorough." After Damon left, Ryan canceled his remaining meetings and drove to a construction site on the outskirts of town. One of his company's newest projects, a community center being built in a neighborhood that was working to revitalize itself after years of neglect. As he walked the site, greeting workers by name and inspecting the progress, Ryan felt a sense of purpose that had been missing for too long. He had built his company the same way he built his buildings, methodically, with attention to detail and a focus on creating something that would last. He had applied the same principles to dismantling his broken marriage and rebuilding his relationships with his children. His phone buzzed with a message from Len. "Still on for dinner tonight? I have news about the hospital project." Ryan smiled as he replied, "Absolutely. Looking forward to it." As he looked around at the half-finished community center, Ryan realized he was no longer angry. The cold determination that had driven him since his birthday had transformed into something more constructive, a clear vision of the future he wanted to build, with people who valued him for who he was, not what he provided. Chapter 8. The Unexpected Turn. 2 months after the divorce was finalized, Ryan's new life had begun to take shape. His relationship with Lynn had evolved from friendship to something deeper, built on mutual respect and genuine connection. His company was thriving with several major new projects. His relationships with Noah and Amber continued to strengthen as they established new, healthier dynamics. Melanie, meanwhile, had been forced to downsize significantly, with the divorce settlement providing only what the prenup specified and Damon Walsh's legal troubles mounting. She had sold many of her luxury possessions and moved into a modest condo. She had also, somewhat surprisingly, started taking interior design jobs again, something she hadn't done since before Amber was born. On a snowy December afternoon, Ryan was reviewing year-end financial reports when Nora announced another unexpected visitor. "Sophia Cooper is here to see you," she said. "She doesn't have an appointment." Ryan raised his eyebrows in surprise. He hadn't spoken to his former mother-in-law in months. "Send her in, please." Sophia entered tentatively, looking smaller and older than Ryan remembered. She declined his offer of a seat. "I won't take much of your time," she began, her voice lacking its usual imperious tone. There are things I need to say to you." Ryan gestured for her to continue. "I was wrong about you," Sophia said simply. "I encouraged Melanie to." She paused, searching for words, to explore her options with Damon. "I told her she deserved someone more attentive, more present." "I see," Ryan replied neutrally. "No, you don't," Sophia shook her head. "I've watched my daughter destroy her marriage, damage her relationship with her children, and lose the life she had, all because I reinforced her worst instincts. And now I'm seeing the consequences." She finally sat down, seeming to deflate. "Melanie is unhappy. Damon is facing criminal charges. And you?" She looked at Ryan directly. "You're flourishing. You've rebuilt everything while treating your children with more generosity than most men would have shown after such betrayal. What exactly are you here for, Sophia?" Ryan asked, genuinely curious. "To apologize," she said simply. "And to ask if there's any way you might consider helping Melanie one more time. Not financially," she added quickly, seeing Ryan's expression harden. "She needs to stand on her own now. But she's struggling to get her design business reestablished. A recommendation from you to some of your business contacts would mean a great deal." Ryan studied the older woman's face, searching for manipulation, but finding only genuine concern and regret. "I'll consider it," he finally said. "Not for Melanie's sake, but for Amber and Noah. They shouldn't have to worry about their mother's financial stability while they're building their own lives." Sophia nodded gratefully. "That's more than fair." She stood to leave, then hesitated. "There's one more thing you should know. Damon's legal troubles. They're worse than what's been reported. He used some of the money Melanie took from your accounts to make investments that are now under scrutiny." Ryan's expression didn't change. "I'm aware of that. My forensic accountant tracked every dollar." "Of course he did," Sophia smiled faintly. "You always were thorough." After she left, Ryan sat thinking about Sophia's visit. It represented something he hadn't expected. Accountability from someone who had contributed to the destruction of his marriage. The apology didn't change the past, but it did provide a certain closure. That evening, as Ryan and Lynn prepared dinner together in his penthouse apartment, he told her about Sophia's visit. "Are you going to help Melanie?" Lynn asked, her tone curious rather than judgmental. "I'm going to help my children by ensuring their mother can support herself," Ryan clarified. "I'll make a few calls, but that's it." Lynn studied his face. "You've changed since I first met you in that coffee shop. You're lighter somehow." Ryan considered this. "I've let go of things I didn't realize were weighing me down. Expectations. Assumptions about what my life should look like. The need to provide everything for people who appreciated nothing." "And how does that feel?" Lynn asked, genuinely interested. "Like freedom," Ryan admitted. "Like I can finally build something real." Later that night, after Lynn had gone home, Ryan received a text from Lucas. "Just heard through the grapevine that Damon Walsh was arrested today. Federal charges related to securities fraud. Thought you should know." Ryan didn't respond immediately. The news didn't bring the satisfaction he might have expected months ago. Instead, it felt like the closing of a chapter, one he was ready to move beyond. His phone buzzed again with a message from Amber. "Dad, have you heard about Damon? Mom's a mess. Noah and I are with her now. We're worried about her state of mind." This message did require a response. "I've heard. Is she safe?" "Yes, but really upset. She keeps saying everything is her fault." Ryan sighed, then made a decision that surprised even himself. "Tell her I'll make those calls to help with her design business. But that's the extent of my involvement. You and Noah are doing the right thing being there for her." Amber replied quickly. "Thanks, Dad. That means a lot. Love you." "Love you too," Ryan typed back, realizing with some surprise that it was true. Despite everything, he still loved his children. He wouldn't allow their mother's actions to destroy that connection, though he would never again allow it to be taken for granted. The next morning, Ryan made 3 brief calls to business associates who might be able to use Melanie's interior design services. He was cordial but clear. This was a professional courtesy based on her qualifications, not a personal endorsement. As he finished the last call, Ryan realized something important. His actions were no longer driven by anger or revenge. He was making choices based on what he wanted to build, not what he wanted to destroy. The distinction felt significant, a marker of how far he had come since that lonely birthday dinner. Chapter 9. The Final Boundary. 6 months after the divorce, Ryan stood in the backyard of his former home, watching as a real estate agent placed a sold sign next to the for sale one. The house had sold for well above asking price, a testament to both the strong market and the property's appeal. As stipulated in the divorce agreement, the proceeds would be divided according to the prenuptial agreement, with Melanie receiving enough to establish herself comfortably but not extravagantly. "Dad," Amber called, emerging from the house with a box labeled Family Photos. "I found these in the attic. I thought you might want them." Ryan accepted the box, a small smile playing at his lips. "Thanks, sweetheart. Anything worth keeping in here?" "I don't know," Amber admitted. "I didn't look through them all, but I thought, well, not everything from before was bad, right?" Ryan nodded thoughtfully. "No, not everything." Noah appeared next, carrying several framed certificates and awards. "These are yours, Dad. From the community service projects and industry recognition. Mom said to make sure you got them." The mention of Melanie hung in the air for a moment. Though she wasn't present for the final walkthrough, having elected to have her lawyer handle her portion of the proceedings, her presence was still felt in the house they had shared for so many years. "How is she doing?" Ryan asked, surprising both his children with the question. Amber and Noah exchanged glances. "She's adjusting," Noah offered carefully. "The design business is picking up. Those referrals you made really helped. She's seeing a therapist," Amber added. "And she stopped blaming everyone else for what happened. That's progress, I guess." Ryan nodded but didn't comment further. His children's relationship with their mother was their own to navigate. He would neither interfere nor encourage it. As the three of them walked through the empty house one last time, memories surfaced in each room. Christmas mornings in the living room, family dinners in the kitchen, homework sessions at the dining room table. Not all the memories were tainted by what came later. In the master bedroom, Ryan paused, remembering both good times and bad. This was where his marriage had slowly died, where Melanie had pulled away from him long before Damon Walsh entered the picture. "You okay, Dad?" Noah asked, noticing his father's expression. "Yes," Ryan said simply. "Just remembering." Outside, as they prepared to leave the property for the final time, Ryan's phone rang. It was Bennett. "Good news," his lawyer said without preamble. "The judge approved the final distribution of assets exactly as we requested. Everything's official now." "Thank you, Bennett," Ryan replied. "For everything." After hanging up, Ryan turned to his children. "That's it then. The house sale will close on Tuesday, and the last financial ties will be severed." "What about us?" Amber asked quietly. "The family ties?" Ryan placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Those are different. Those are chosen, not legally mandated. You and Noah will always be my children, and I'll always be your father. That hasn't changed." "And Mom?" Noah asked hesitantly. Ryan's expression turned serious. "Your mother made her choices, and I made mine in response. I don't wish her ill, but there are boundaries now that will never be crossed again. She's no longer my concern, except as your mother." The clear finality in his tone left no room for misinterpretation. Ryan Holloway had rebuilt his life on his own terms. He had shown mercy where he chose to, helping Melanie establish her business, ensuring Sophia's basic needs were met, supporting his children unconditionally. But he had never wavered on the fundamental boundary. Those who had betrayed him most deeply would never again be welcomed into his inner circle. Later that evening, at a celebration dinner with Lynn, Lucas, and several close friends, Ryan raised a glass in a toast. "To endings that make new beginnings possible,"